It is often better to know lovingly than to love knowingly. We can be completely right and yet wrong. Completely wrong, yet right. Sometimes Christmas is less than perfect, but Christmas can be better than our wildest expectations. When we do not know the full story, we make the wrong conclusions. The Grinch stands at the precipice of Mount Crumpet with a sleigh full of all the Who's holiday fare. His sleigh teeters on the edge, ready to disappear into the abyss along with the Who's hope of a Merry Christmas. The Grinch does not steal away Christmas for personal gain, power, or influence. At worst, it seems that he is causing harm for the sake of causing harm. It is true that the Grinch is bent on punishing the Who's for their love of Christmas, but does his dastardly deed go deeper? With a heart 2 sizes too small, why would we expect anything less than a love for wrongdoing? Regardless of his motivations, as he is pushing Christmas off the edge of a cliff, he cups his ear to hear the Who's weeping, wailing, and gnashing of teeth. He is convinced that what he has done has worked. He is certain that his assumptions are right. When have you been certain, so certain, only to be so wrong? How did you discover your mistake or misunderstanding? And what did you do with the discovery? I have never met someone who did not agree with his or her position or opinion. The limits of our understandings, our feelings, our reactions lead us to try to solve our problems through our limitations. A few weeks back, we shared the story of Herod the Great and his encounter with the Babylonian or Persian astrologers who were looking for the King of the Jews, rightfully in the palace at Jerusalem. Herod asked for them to find the child and bring word to him back. And when Herod the Great discovered that they weren't going to return, but he knew enough information from them to know something to do with it, he ordered the death of all male children under the age of 2 in and around Bethlehem, using force if necessary to eliminate a perceived threat to power and authority. Matthew records this in the gospel, but what is the conclusion of this horrid quest? Matthew tells us when Herod died, there may have been a moment when you knew what you were doing or saying was not quite right. A moment, a flicker of recognition that even now what you thought or felt was not as true as you originally believed. A pause can make a big difference in our conclusions. This week we encounter Mary as she encounters Gabriel's perplexing announcement of her pregnancy and the nature of the one whom she will deliver. Mary moves here into the unknown, but says yes to God anyway. I am struck by her testimony that the only question she asked of Gabriel was, how would this child arrive without, shall we say, the usual methods? Mary did not ask about the palace arrangements associated with the coming king, or even when Gabriel told her that he would be on the throne of his ancestor David and ruling the house of Jacob, Israel, without end. Mary knew, but she also did not know and did not need to know everything to respond to God's purpose or plan. The Grinch thought that the only solution to his hatred of Christmas was to remove everything about it from those who participated in it. And he proceeded without pausing, even masterfully providing an acceptable lie to Cindy Lou Who about her family Christmas tree needing to have a light fixed, with promises of returning it when it was repaired. Promises the Grinch never intended to keep. Now we imagine an overstuffed sleigh upon the top of Mount Crumpet is slowly sliding into the Grinch's anticipated Christmas tomb when he pauses to listen for distress from Whoville that did not arrive. Or even in there without, the Who's find a song to sing of Christmas. It was likely not a carol, but something meaningful and deep, and that shriveled heart of one who was 2 sizes too small began to grow. First, 1 size larger. In Luke, we have the recording of the Emperor Augustus announcing a census. Now, frankly, this emperor is interested in 2 things when he's announcing a census. It's not to get names and places, it's to get treasure and armies for his empire. And this act unexpectedly is bent by God to God's purposes to help deliver his chosen ruler. Caesar's census announced one person in charge, yet it revealed someone else was the ruler of the world. The Who's can still sing of Christmas without the Christmas decorations. Do we? Our second scene is one of those left out in the night, protecting the vulnerable in the fields. Luke reveals this testimony when the angel arrived along with the heavenly host to announce to the shepherds. They probably still held on to their protective staves and rods. They did not know what God was up to that night, but they were willing to search for what God's messengers had told them to find. The Grinch has discovered something unexpected, disarming, too, in the Who's slow but increasing song. Now he ponders what Christmas needs if the Who's can still have Christmas without what he thought they needed, now bundled tightly in the sleigh on Mount Crumpet. Christmas did not depend on gifts under the tree, the figgy pudding on the table, and the stockings hung by the fireplace with care. Christmas, the Grinch discovered, is so much more. This realization grows the Grinch's heart yet another size more. Our third scene is a response among the shepherds following the angel's announcement, remarkably similar to a Roman announcement of army victory or palace pronouncements. The shepherds go to find what they're told to look for in Bethlehem, as the angels had told them. And imagine the joy when what was told to them was indeed found, as was said. Like wrapped presents, we want to revel in the reveal. In the sudden rush of feelings that the Grinch has not experienced before, the Grinch brings down the sleigh, his heart now bursting to overflowing and wanting to do exactly what he had just previously swore to stop, sharing this beloved holiday of the Who's with them. Being human means that we have limited vision, and God putting on flesh in the person of Jesus of Nazareth also means that God enters into our vulnerability and short-sightedness. God's greatest weakness is God's love for us. It is a love so powerful that God chose to be born into our finitude, our dependence, and scarcity of human life. But this is good news. Gabriel was correct in saying, I bring good news to you, wonderful, joyous news, when announcing Jesus' birth. The good news is that our humanity is being redeemed. Jesus is not coming to us to make us something we are not. Rather, Jesus lived with and among us so that we might live abundantly into the beauty of our God-given humanity. The defining character revealing what it means to be alive, and through God's grace, invited and provided an opportunity to grow into who God is calling us to be. Warts and all, love truly came down at Christmas. That's the thing about love, isn't it? Love does not mean that everything will work out the way we plan. Love does not mean there will not be suffering, hardship, or guarantees of the good life, however you want to define that. But love never tires of making sure that we are valued and that we are precious and that we are God's own. Hope is the poetry of Advent, inviting us to have a holy imagination for a better tomorrow. Peace is the way to build the framework. Joy arrives without invitation. And love disarms and dismantles. Will you let love enter? Love is the essential gift. Love is honoring the fact that this season has different meanings for us. Love reminds us that being present is as a gift just as much as buying presents. Sending love is just as precious as sending gifts. Donating and giving to others is living love out loud. Love, like waiting, is active, not passive, as we continue into this season, lighting the candle of love and preparing for the lighting of the Christ candle to come. We are reminded yet again that waiting is the preparation station that has prepared us for the birth of Christ. But where does this story go now? How should it end? There are always last words, and through the brilliance of the internet, you can look up the last words of all kinds of people who have lived and died. This wallpaper and I are fighting a duel to the death. Either it goes or I do, said Oscar Wilde. Oh, wow, said Steve Jobs. I have not given too much thought to my last words. I do hope my last words are not, watch this, or, of course it is safe. And Jesus' last words? Well, there are several, of course. At the cross, there they are called the 7 words or sayings. But often we forget that Jesus spoke again after his death, and often spoke of forgiveness. The Gospel of Luke records Jesus' last words as, "This is what is written. The Christ will suffer and rise from the dead on the third day, and a change of heart and life for the forgiveness of sins must be preached in his name to all nations, beginning from Jerusalem. You are witnesses of these things." Forgiveness above all else. Forgiveness is refusing the right to harm someone in the way that she or he has harmed you. It may not mean rebuilding a friendship or resuming a relationship as before. Forgiveness should not be a doormat, but is the path to freedom. Our last scene in How the Grinch Stole Christmas is the Grinch, the outsider, the other, the one who should be feared and excluded by the Who's, now at the head of the table, carving the roast beast. When Theodore Gazelle, Dr. Seuss, started to write his story, he intended to express his dislike and disgust with much of the excess he saw in the Christmas season. And we often make the mistake to conclude that he wanted to teach us that Christmas is not about these things. But his story does not conclude with a scene of returned gifts, decorations, or the Grinch participating in the noisemakers or singing. It shows the Grinch preparing to eat as one included at the Who's table, reconciled with his neighbors. Hope, peace, joy, love. Behind the trinkets and treasures at a table, giving the least of these the honored place or seat. May we do better than what we know. May others know better by what we do. Who is missing from the place of honor from this season of Christmas? Will you prepare the place to make room for hope, peace, joy, love? One is coming who reconciles all. Are we willing to invite and join former enemies at his table? What will your life finally speak and say to others? Will it be forgiveness, moving towards reconciliation, wrapped in the binding ribbon of God's love and grace? It's now your time and place to write that ending. Amen.